Cellular adaptation. Cellular adaptation is nothing but adjustment of the cell to adopt a new steady state. So when there is a stimuli to the cell always constantly adapt to new demands, that is physiological demand, to maintain its homeostasis or homeostatic state. And this steady state is achieved, or what we call as adaptation, by performing excess work, replicating, decreasing the functions, or changing its differentiated properties. So in this new state, cell either perform increasingly, that is what we call hyperfunctioning, or decrease in the function, that is what we call as hypofunctioning. So the main key concept in understanding the cellular adaptation is, in the normal cells, they usually have a very narrow range of function. That narrow range or function range is termed as what we call as homeostasis or new steady state. If the physiological or pathological stress is more, the cell may force to adopt a new state, that is what we term as cellular adaptation. And if the stress in the cellular adaptation state is more excess beyond the capacity, that is what called as cell's adaptive capacity, that stress may damage the microcellular organs. That is what we call as cellular injury. So in cellular injury and cellular adaptive changes, usually the quantum that include is normal activities, adaptation, cellular injury, or lethal changes. So these are the major range always exist during the life cycle of a cell. So adaptation is usually defined as is a normal life cycle adjustment, like in growth during puberty, that is changes during pregnancy or aging, and stressful lifestyle which produces changes that may lead to adaptation or disease. So here the disease is if the cell loses its adaptive capacity, or the stress is more stronger than the cell capacity, that will cause disease. So cell constantly make adjustment to the changing hostile environment to keep the things within the normal state, which is important, necessary to ensure the survival of the organism. Prevention of the disease by the body always depend upon the capacity of the affected cell to undergo self-repair, regeneration, that is what called as new adaptive changes. So if the stress is removed, the cell will come back to the normal position and it will undergo normal repair. The cell and the environment can be explained by this figure. Always cell undergo under the homeostatic conditions. If the stress is increased, demand is increased, then the cell will adopt a new steady state, that is what called as adaptation. And if the injurious stimuli is strong or stress is more, then the cell will go or will not be able to adopt the new steady state, that is what we call as adaptation. The cell will go to the next step, that is what we call as cellular injury. In the cellular injury, if the cell microorganelles get damaged, then the cell will not be able to cope up with the stress or the demand or the pathological changes, then the cell death will occur. This is called as cellular death. So what are the causes of cellular adaptations? So when cells are met to one to the following stimuli, they may undergo adaptive changes. So the most common causes or stimuli are physical agent, that is trauma, burn, pressure, irradiations or radiations. Second, chemical agents, poison, drug, simple compounds. Then the microorganism, bacteria, virus, fungus, parasites. The other stimuli, that is hypoxia, that is less concentration of oxygen in the blood. So this is one of the most common cause, and because of inadequate oxygen in the blood or decreased perfusion capacity, that leads to or trigger many diseases. Then the other factor is genetic defects can be affect cellular metabolism through inborn errors of metabolism or gross malformations. Nutrition imbalances, another important cause for the cellular adaptations. So undernutrition or overnutrition both causes cellular injury or changes in the cell. Immunological reactions, these are another important factors which play a very important role, that is hypersensitivity reactions. So what are the different types of cellular adaptive changes? So usually when cell exposed to noxious stimuli, they will undergo one or more the following adaptive changes, that is what we call as increase concentration of normal cellular constituent. Second, accumulate abnormal substances. Third, change the cellular size or number. And the fourth is they may undergo lethal changes. That is what we call as cellular injury or cell death. So in the normal and abnormal accumulation of intracellular substances, that is nothing but result from the environmental changes or inability of the cell to process the material or the substances that cannot be metabolized by the cell in the normal physiology. So these substances may accumulate in the cytoplasms, or the result of common adaptive changes include cellular swelling, lipid accumulation, that is what we call as fatty changes process in the cytoplasm of the cell, glycogen deposition, that is excess deposition of the glycogen in the organs, calcification, precipitation of calcium in the dead or what you call as inflamed or chronic inflamed area. Then the hyaline infiltration, that is characteristic alteration within the cell or in the extracellular space that appear as an inclusion stain in the histological studies. So what is cellular swelling? This is nothing but when cell loses its ability to control the movement of ion and water in and out of the cell, usually what you call as vacuoles. They may result if sodium potassium ATPase pumps are not sufficiently work properly or fail to restrict the movement of this ion. So the excess sodium or water accumulate inside the luminal space. This will increase the cell size, that is usually termed as edema. The other changes, that is what called as lipid accumulation, that is usually occur in the liver, that is what we call as fatty liver. This is glycogen deposition due to disturb in the metabolism. Deposition of calcium, that is calcification either in the kidney, joints or in the bones. This is the hyaline infiltration. So the cellular adaptation, that is physiological versus pathogenic conditions, is divided into different groups, different type. That is what we call as atrophy, that is decrease in the cell size when compared to the normal cells. Hypertrophy, increase in the cell size. It may be due to deposition of abnormal cellular concentration, or it may be because of excess or increase in the growth that leads to hypertrophy. Hyperplasia, next, that is called as increase in the cell number. This is due to either a mutation or dysregulation in the regulatory genes of the cell cycle that leads to uncontrolled cellular growth or proliferation. that is what we call as the hyperplasia. Metaplasia, it is also called as the neoplasm or the due to result of mutation, uncontrolled cellular growth or proliferation. Dysplasia, totally change in the parent cell of development of new cells. That is what we call as the dysplasia. So cellular adaptation, either it may be because of growth adaptation or degenerations. So the example for growth adaptation is hyperplasia, hypoplasia, hypertrophy, atrophy, metaplasia, dysplasia or neoplasia. Whereas as far as accumulation of the abnormal cellular constituent or cellular constituent, that is what we call as degeneration, hydrophobic changes, fatty changes, hyaline changes or pigment storage due to wear and tear. So when the cell adopt a new steady state, if the space is excess, then that cell undergo cellular injury. That is what we call as reversible cellular injury. If this injury is very chronic or strong, then the damage which is occur because of stress is irreparable, then that particular stage is called as irreversible cellular injury, and from irreversible cellular injury, death is evident. If you remove the state at the adaptive level, whatever the minor damages occur in the cell that can be recovered, that is what we call as reversible cellular injury. So these are the certain slides which depict the hydrophobic degeneration, deposition of edema, muscle ischemic hypertrophy, decrease in the cell size, then cerebral atrophy, that is usually occur in the Alzheimer. When compared with the normal brain, there is a atrophy in the cerebellar area. This is the kidney, that is atrophy in the kidney. This is what called as left ventricular hypertrophy. This usually occur increase in the size because of overfunctioning, that is in the hypertension. Then hypertrophy of the tongue, which causes usually certain drugs and other thing. This is what we call as increased stimulation of prostate gland, that is benign prostatic hyperplasia. Then the endometrial hyperplasia, that is fibroblast, or the what you call as increase in the endometrium. This is lung metaplasia, that is usually occur in the smokers. This is esophagitis, that is gastric metaplasia, which changes the villi in the esophagus. This is cervical dysplasia. So these are the certain examples or brief description regarding the cellular adaptation. And if this cellular adaptation is not properly handled, the cell will go under cellular injury. Hope you understand this brief introduction to the cellular adaptation. Thank you very much.